No. Unpopular opinion, but Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends could have been a bit better. I get that for many, it's a creative and charming show and a Cartoon Network classic, but it makes me feel like a babysitter when I'm watching it. The premise and animation may be stellar, but the stories drag, the characters aren't given the development they were designed for, and the humor got meaner as it went on. I'm not here to make a second video moping about this show, I'm here to ask, what if? What if the runtime for the average episode was shorter? Could that bring the show up to my speed? Sounds like a stupid question worth a stupid answer of maybe, but think about it. A show's runtime says a lot about what it aims to accomplish narratively. Just looking at Cartoon Network, the three most common formats in its early days were 3x7, where they'd compile 3 short episodes in one half-hour package that may fluctuate slightly in length, but are usually 7 minutes each. These are for simple, easy-to-digest shows like Dexter's Lab and Grim and Evil, where an episode may set out to offer 1 or 2 stunning moments, but just want to give you something quick and easy to be entertained by. Then there's the 2x11 structure, the most commonly used by Cartoon Network then and now. Same deal as before, but can offer stories more room to breathe, offer swerves, offer a satisfying resolution at the end. And then there are the single 22-minute episodes usually reserved for action or adventure shows like Samurai Jack and Megas XLR, shows that pack a lot of attitude and atmosphere and would feel squished in any other format. So why was Foster's given 22-minute episodes? It's a wacky slice-of-life comedy set in a mundane world with fantastical elements. It didn't need to have full-length stories, right? Well, when you learn about what Craig McCracken and his team initially wanted the show to contain, and then how it turned out, you can understand why they were forced into this format. It was always supposed to be a wacky comedy, but in the development phase, there was meant to be a more sensitive tone and chances for character development. Characters were meant to start out with big flaws that would be addressed and fought as the series went on, but Cartoon Network executives forced them to downplay or flat out discard these opportunities so it could be easier to watch out of order. Never mind in this current age of streaming, watching a show out of order is only something circus clowns like to do. The biggest casualty of this gutting was Blue. Not only was his more outrageous personality not even a thing in the early drafts, as he was meant to be Mac's security blanket, but his worsening behavior across the series was never given any in-universe acknowledgement or punishment. Early on, you could get the sense why he was Mac's id, the part of him that wants to do reckless things like fight back against his older brother or have candy at a party. But by the time he's throwing surprise parties to screw with Mac psychologically, it's like, how could he want this? Blue's just one example in a long line of characters who weren't given any sort of growth across the series, and the results speak for themselves. So that can be one pro of making Foster's episodes shorter. There would be no preconceived expectations for character development. When the series is structured and presented as a simple comedy, you don't expect it to be anything more than a simple comedy. House of Blues was not a bad movie, but it was clearly setting up the wrong show. And season 1 was okay, dare I say it's the best one, but it really struggled in finding a way to drag its simple conflicts out for half an hour. That's another thing that could have been prevented, padding. There's a reason most kids' comedy cartoons from this time in Foster's vein use the 2x11 format. SpongeBob, the Powerpuff Girls, Ed, Edd n Eddy, Jimmy Neutron, the Fairly OddParents. It's because their stories don't need to be half hours, and when they were, the results weren't always pretty. Except for in the latter two shows' cases. Especially in the Powerpuff Girls, because of that show's snappy pace being compromised, and Cartoon Network Studios' adoration for overly long gags, you can get half-hour Powerpuff Girls episodes where you don't even get a story until 3 or 4 minutes in. That can be an issue with Foster's too. There are episodes like Squeeze the Day that take an unusually long time to get to the point. Cutting the length in half can increase the odds of episodes getting straight to the point and offering as many jokes, twists, turns, and trials as they need. Another clear benefit is more stories overall, nearly double of what they actually made. It can allow us to get a little more perspective on everything these characters are capable of. The show ended up getting 78 episodes, so sure, we got plenty of time with them, but seeing them do more things in that time, go on more adventures, and explore more aspects of being an imaginary friend could have been cool. Like, they got a camping episode, but that opens up the possibility of other kinds of outdoor activity romps that they couldn't fit into the series, because Abraham Lincoln Pen was just so high on the priority list. So with all of these possible benefits, why did this show hardly dabble in shorter episode formats? Well, for every good thing that could come out of this format, there's a bad thing that could further undermine the original point of the show. Conflicts could be even more vapid and aimless. Some of the stories in Foster's were quite thin and just excuses to see characters do silly things. The episode Room with a Feud has a particularly simple obstacle and reason for the main gang to fight each other, and while it's already quite forced in the half-hour format, could you imagine if there were more episodes like this, where nothing is achieved for 11 minutes, then nothing is achieved for another 11 minutes? That's another thing that could happen more often, nonsense endings or anti-endings that turn the whole episode into one big joke, at the expense of you for wanting to get a resolution out of them. Making the episodes shorter could give them more of an excuse to whip these out, even if you aren't losing as much time in the shorter format. If you thought Foster's Goes to Europe was a pointless farce, why would you want the chance of sitting through 2 of them in a row? And finally, could you imagine if Foster's characters were even more rash and underdeveloped? If they made more 11-minute episodes, then there's barely a chance we'd learn anything in the long term. Granted, in the shorter format, that wouldn't be a big loss since that's no longer what the show would put that much stock in, but you'd lose a lot of storytelling possibilities if you had no half hours. That's why a lot of these aforementioned Foster's-esque shows dabbled in the occasional half-hour episode, even if they weren't usually the crown jewels of those shows' catalogs. Foster's went the opposite route initially, having mostly half-hour episodes with the occasional 2-segment package to fit in some shorter and less taxing stories. There were only 3 of these across the first 2 seasons, and they were just way too unpredictable in story quality, ending with Everyone Knows It's Bendy, an episode that was meant to be full length, but got shortened by Cartoon Network partway through production, leading to the final product being one of the most hated episodes of any cartoon of the whole decade. Bendy is the argument you'll always get as to why Foster's didn't work in this format, even though it's a fair bit longer than 11 minutes, and was never designed to be a short-form story in the first place. Still, it revealed that there could be some serious problems in the story department if they kept making these. So, every episode for the rest of the series was either a half-hour or a multi-episode special. Well, the solution's been staring me in the face this whole time. When people reminisce about the good episodes of Foster's, you're always going to see the TV movies brought up: House of Blues, Good Will Hunting, and Destination Imagination, often still packaged as multi-episode specials but sometimes presented as whole movies. These have everything the early development phase was aiming for. They explore the world's possibilities, give the characters something to learn about each other, offer creative and forward-thinking uses for the then cutting-edge animation. Seriously, if Foster's was just the movies, or a string of 2 to 3 movies a year made across 4 to 5 years, it might be one of my favorite animated franchises of all time. So what could go wrong in this scenario? Not much, but you've still got the possibility of padding, and a lot of simpler, more laid-back story ideas like Dinner is Swerved or Adopt-Calypse Now wouldn't have existed. Character introductions for later mainstays like Cheese and Goo would have had to be longer, and those episodes were already pushing their luck as is, and the Foster's team weren't miracle workers. I don't know if anyone would be able to make multiple specials a year in the vein of Good Will Hunting and Destination Imagination without getting burnt out. Maybe just annual specials could have done, but this was a series begging to be a series, something people tuned into frequently. I'm not saying I know how to run a show at all. I'm not telling these people how to do their jobs 20 years after the fact. But thinking about what the show was meant to be and how it evolved into something much less welcoming and consistent, I have to wonder how things could have been different. I'm just thankful for the little victories Foster's was able to gain, all the best episodes and jokes it delivered, the silly as hell world that was brought to life by some of the finest folks in the animation industry. So in conclusion, I don't know if I want the preschool show to be 10 TV movies, but I'll be happy if it's as beautiful as the original series, if not more. Animation-wise, this is where good ideas are always welcome, and I can live with that.